Welcome to Making Einstein for Developers work for you. My name is Ananya, joining me today is Sridhar, and today we'll be taking you on a whirlwind tour of all the new features coming out with Einstein for Developers. We'll start off by giving you a preview of all the new features in action with a demo. Then I'll hand it over to Sridhar to take you behind the scenes and really understand how our IDE, our LLM, and our trust layer work together to give you all the functionality that you'll get to see today. So let's go ahead and get started. Like any Salesforce presentation, please make sure that you make all of your purchasing decisions based off of publicly available products and info. And of course, thank you. Thank you to all of you Salesforce developers who take the time to give us feedback. This makes sure that PMs like myself and Sridhar are really designing our products with your pain points in mind. So thank you again. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Ananya, and I'm your PM for the IDE experience, and now Einstein for Developers. Alongside,
my name is Sridhar Raghavan. I'm a product manager from Salesforce AI Research, and excited to be bringing all these amazing features to you all.
Awesome. So let's take a moment to understand what the current landscape for many of our Salesforce developers is. We've heard from many of you that oftentimes you have many different tools that you need to figure out how to work with. And based off the task you're working on, you switch to a different tool each time. Alongside this, as the Salesforce platform continues to evolve and we put out new features in Apex and LWC, our best practices and guidance that we give y'all changes as well. And in the backdrop of all of this, you still have all of those tasks and assignments that you need to complete while you're trying to keep up with this constant state of change. So, our goal with Einstein for Developers is to help you be more productive as you're building on top of the platform. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these new features that we've released to help you be more productive as you develop. So today, I'm going to be working inside of Code Builder, and I'm working with my e-bikes project. For those of y'all who aren't familiar, e-bikes is one of our Trailhead apps that you can go ahead and reference yourself. Now, my main thing I want to do is complete a few different tasks with the help of Einstein for Developers. And so I'm going to make sure that I have Einstein installed and available to me within my local code builder. So here, within the VS Code Marketplace, we can see we have it. And of course, you have your Einstein status bar icon. By looking at this icon, you can quickly see whether or not Einstein's ready to go. And if you click on it, we open up this helpful status menu that lets you know about Einstein's current status. You can easily enable or disable certain features that we provide. And then, of course, you can customize your configuration even further with our keyboard shortcuts and settings. And last but not least, we also give you quick access to our Getting Started walkthrough and documentation. Now, luckily today, you have Sridhar and myself who are experts, so we'll go ahead past the documentation and get started with my task. So today, I'm working inside of the product controller, and earlier in the day, I'd gone ahead and written out my getProducts method. This method, I'm getting all of my products, but I also need to understand what all of my top products are, so the most expensive ones, and I need to figure out what all those similar products are based off of the product family. Now, usually, I would have been doing this all by myself, and it would have been taking me some time. Today, I'm going to use the Einstein sidebar to get started. With the Einstein sidebar, I can use natural language instructions to describe the task that I'm looking to do. Now, here you can see that I have inputted in my task describing what I'm doing today. And really, this is your prompt that's getting submitted to our large language model behind the scenes. Now, there's a few tips I want to give you to make sure that your response is what you're looking for. First up, make sure that you specify any best practices you want to see followed. So here, I want to make sure that I have that Aura-enabled annotation so that it can be called from a Lightning Web Component. I also want to name the method getTopProduct, so I've specified that within the prompt itself. The next few tips revolve around how to provide the LLM with enough context to ensure that the response you're getting is actually relevant to my use case. In this case, I'm working with my product controller, and what I want to make sure is that I have any of those files related to the task that I'm working on open within my active editor. So what this means is that our LLM is actually looking to see what open tabs you have within your code editor. This gives us an indication that the files you're working with, whether it's product controller, order controller, are relevant to the tasks that you're completing. So we'll accurately pull in the methods that you might have declared within those classes. Now the next tips revolve around making sure that you're correctly referencing metadata in your response. In this case, I want to work with my product custom object. So you'll see that I've included that API name within the prompt itself. This makes sure that our LLM understands what metadata you're actually working with. And then in the generated response, I'm expecting to see the correct fields that were declared on that custom object within the response itself. Now, we've gone ahead and we've told our LLM the name of the metadata I'm working with, but it doesn't have an idea of the schema behind that metadata, so it doesn't know about those custom fields quite yet. We need to make sure that we pull down all of the relevant custom objects that we're working with so that they're reflected in that response. The way that we do that is using our refresh s-object definitions command. When you run this command, we're pulling down that schema for your standard objects and your custom objects, so that now, when I reference my product object, I'm going to see the correct fields being referenced. So once I hit ask, we get our generated response from the LLM. And what I'm seeing here is that my MSRP custom field on that object was correctly referenced. So I'll go ahead, copy that code over, and looks like I'm ready to go with my first task, right? No. When you're working with any LLM, you want to make sure that you take a moment to review the code. In this case, I'm going to update how we were declaring that return type here to actually use that product custom object return list. Now, the next task that I was looking to work on is to figure out what all of my similar products are. I actually have an idea of how this method might start off, so I'm going to use my usual Aura-enabled annotation to actually get started. Now here, you can see that I'm going to insert in the snippet that we have within VS Code, and I'll go ahead, quickly update that return type that we're looking at, and again, it's the list of the product custom objects, and I'll go ahead and update that method name itself to be getSimilarProducts. Now you'll notice that as I start typing out my method parameters, my method body is actually being auto-completed. Behind the scenes, Einstein is taking a look at the first few lines ahead of this method and after this method to then generate a response and fill out my method body. Now, as I start hitting tab, we're going to auto-complete the rest of this method with all of those correct custom fields actually being referenced based off of, again, that product custom object that we'd specified. So now this is great because I was expecting getSimilarProducts to actually reference all of those new fields that I'm working with, and I wanted to figure out the similar products based off of the product family, which I see here as well. So I'll just go ahead and delete that try catch that came with the annotation, because we don't really need that here, and we're pretty much ready to go with our first two methods. Now, although I've reviewed this code for best practices, it would be great if I had a tool in my back pocket to make sure that we're really following those best practices and not introducing any security violations. Well, with the help of Salesforce Code Analyzer within my IDE, I can actually scan my code and make sure that I'm following all those best practices. So I'll go ahead and run this scan current file with Code Analyzer command. And what this is going to do is actually scan my entire file to make sure that we don't have any violations of best practices. Behind the scenes, we're using that Apex PMD engine to complete the scan. Now again, it looks like I missed enforcing that user mode or validating those CRUD permissions with that original query we'd added in. So for now, I'll go ahead and add in with security enforced mode, but as I'm looking at all of this, I'm realizing I'll probably come back to this file later on and update these to use our new as user mode command coming from Apex. So we'll go ahead, scan this file one more time, make sure we don't have any of those security vulnerabilities, and then I'll be ready to get started with my next task. Okay, we look good. So, like any good developer, I want to make sure that I've actually created test methods to validate the new methods that I've created just now. So usually, this is the most tedious part of my job. Getting started with tests is hard, and I know how important it is, but it can still be cumbersome. But now, with the help of our new Einstein generate a test command, I'll actually get a scaffold of a test that I can use to iterate off of. So now when I run this command, I'll specify any specific test file that I'd like to see the output being added to, and most importantly, I'm going to call out any existing test methods that duplicate the types of checks I might be making. In this case, I had an existing method, so I've gone ahead and selected that. And this helps us make sure that our large language model doesn't duplicate any of the new test methods that are being generated based off of what you had in your file itself. So this actually looks pretty good for me for now. So I'm going to go ahead and just accept this method. I'll definitely come back later and really validate that all the functionality is doing what I intended to, like any good programmer. And we do recommend that you always have Prettier installed so you can get those best practices for formatting as well. So today, we got a chance to see quite a few things in action with our demo. We got a chance to see our new Apex test case generation features. We also saw code auto-completion. Today we got to see this within our Apex file, but this is available to you within your Lightning Web Component files as well, specifically with JavaScript and CSS. HTML support is coming soon. Now last but not least, we also have an update to our data usage policy, so we are not using any customer data or submitted code to train our internal LLM here at Salesforce. And again, we shared a few of our effective prompt writing tips during the demo itself, so I'd recommend you take a quick screenshot of this slide, and then we'll move on. I will pause because I see some phones up in the air. All right. So most importantly, what's coming next for Einstein 4 developers? Well, we have quite a few items on our roadmap based off of the feedback that y'all have provided us throughout the pilot and open beta. First up is code explanations. We've heard from many of you that oftentimes you want it to be easier when you're learning about a new part of your code base. Sometimes those original developers who wrote that code are no longer around, and we just need a quick explanation to help us get started. Now with the help of code explanations, you'll get to see a natural language description that describes that code structure, logic, and how you might want to integrate that code within your project itself. Next up, as I mentioned earlier, one of the most important pieces about working with LLMs is making sure that they have enough context to make sure that the output is relevant to your use case. With the retrieval augmented generation techniques, our goal is to help improve how much context we're able to provide the LLM to make sure, again, that that output is specific to your use case. Last but not least, we have the multi-turn chat experience. The goal of this experience is to help you with a few things. First up, we want to give you the ability to iterate over the responses or prompts that you submit to the LLM, so that you can refine the responses to be more specific to what you were looking for. Second, we also know that you're not always writing net new code. A lot of times you're editing existing code or refactoring code. With the capabilities within our chat experience, we'll make those sorts of tasks even easier. Now, last but not least, we know that a lot of times just hunting through a documentation to figure out how to work with our APIs and new features can take a lot of time. We want to make it so that you no longer have to do that, and you can just ask all your questions right within your editor to Einstein itself. And of course, if you ever want to keep that sidebar outside of your valuable real estate space, with our new inline chat functionality, you can stay in the flow of your work and be within that code editor itself. Again, everything we talked about today and on our roadmap will be available to you in both Code Builder and VS Code. Now with that, I'll hand it over to Sridhar to go more into depth what's happening behind the scenes.
Thank you, Ananya. So the AI model that's powering all these amazing experiences for Einstein for Developers is called CodeGen. CodeGen is Salesforce's own large language model for code generation and code understanding. So this model is an open source model that is available on GitHub if you would like to download and use it. With CodeGen, we have been able to deliver 3 key values for this product. First, we were able to take this model, customize and fine-tune it to help boost the accuracy for use cases that our developers care about most. And second, we are able to host this model in a trusted environment within Salesforce. So when you use Einstein for Developers, none of your prompts or code leaves the Salesforce ecosystem. And finally, some of our use cases are niche, which requires very low latency and high scalability. So we've been able to take CodeGen and customize it for this specific use case and deliver that to you. Internally at Salesforce, we've been using this model to help our own employees and developers improve their efficiency. So we did a survey recently where we asked all our developers on what they are thinking about CodeGen and how it's helping them. And it turns out it saves a developer on average 90 minutes a week by using tools powered by this language model. And in last 9 months, this model has written more than 500,000 lines of code that has been inspected and accepted by a human. The model itself has been trained with more than 80 plus languages. Our developers use around 20 odd languages on a day-to-day basis, so that's what the model is used for today. The model itself isn't the secret sauce here. It requires an entire pipeline to make sure that this experience is delivered to you in the workflow that you're used to. So let's look at how Einstein for Developers actually uses CodeGen for those experiences that Ananya just showed. So the simplest use case is the natural language to code experience that you invoke from the sidebar. So in this case, the user types in a natural language text on the text box by clicking on the Einstein logo. So what happens next is Einstein for Developers pulls in the relevant context from your entire code base and any metadata that is relevant based on the prompt that you've just given, and packages the prompt as an input to the large language model. So the input to the model contains both the extracted context that we do internally and any context that the user has given as part of the prompt and the prompt itself. And then the output is generated by the model, which is all still within the trust layer. So before it is sent out to the IDE, we ensure that it is screened for any toxic and harmful content, and only if it passes that, it is shown on the end user screen. So like I said, this is the simplest use case. Let's look at something a little more complicated. So code auto-completion is one of the most demanding use cases for Einstein. And the reason I say that is the experience has to be in tune with the users typing on their keyboard, which means it has to be instantaneous. And it shouldn't be annoying to a point where if the user is not intending to get an auto-completion, but we keep firing suggestions, it would not be a great experience. So we have to do something about the user experience where it seems seamless. And then this is also a scenario where, from an infrastructure standpoint, we have to accommodate a large volume of requests coming to our system. Let's look at it. Let's look at how we solve this problem with CodeGen. So to begin with, we have a lightweight trigger model that's embedded within your extension when you install Einstein for Developers. And this model is the one that signals whether the user is intending to actually get a completion or they are trying to do something else, in which case we don't want to fire auto-completions. So when that model decides it's a valid request, at that point, because this is an autocomplete use case, we have to pull in relevant context. In this case, it might be few lines before the cursor, few lines after the cursor, and also any other code that's in your project that is relevant based on the lines that you're trying to edit is sent as input to the model. At this point, the model generates the output, and we don't just generate one output. We have multiple candidates as output in this case, and they are ranked, and we send multiple options to the end user as well, so that they can select the second or third option if the first one is not right. And since all this is happening again within the trust layer, we screen for any toxic or harmful content before the final result is rendered on the user screen. Finally, I want to say that we take trust and safety very seriously. So we set ourselves a very high bar at the beginning of last year when we were building products in generative AI. And we set ourselves these 5 pillars that we still are sticking to and are going to stick to in the future as well. So to give you an example, the model that we have trained for Einstein for Developers has only been trained on licensed and legally permissible data. And then I mentioned briefly about sustainability. We are a strong believer in using the right-sized model for the right task, because these models are very energy hungry, and you don't want to throw in a trillion parameter model for something that can be solved very effectively with a much smaller model. With that, we come to the end of this presentation, but a quick recap of what you just saw today. So we just announced 2 amazing features for Einstein for Developers this week. One is test case generation for Apex and inline auto-completion for Apex and LWC. And we also saw a sneak peek of our roadmap that is for the upcoming year, and also behind the scenes of how these features actually work for Einstein for Developers. If you're more interested in kind of learning more about it, please do visit our booths to get a more hands-on experience with these features. If you're interested in knowing about the research and the CodeGen model itself, we have some links here. Those are good starters for you. With that, I would like to say thank you for taking time to come and attend this session. Really appreciate that. And before I forget, this is a QR code that will take you directly to the download link on the Marketplace, VS Code Marketplace, to install Einstein for Developers if you have not installed it already. And please do share it with your teammates. Thank you.